Saudi Arabia is preparing for a decisive battle with the Houthi rebels. According to foreign media reports, there are even assessments that they are preparing for a full-scale war. Let's take a closer look at this today. Let's get right into it. If you want the fastest international news, please subscribe to Census Do. I appreciate your support. As you know, the Houthi rebels are effectively blockading the Red Sea. Due to this, Saudi Arabia is reportedly planning a major ground operation to break the Red Sea blockade. Currently, significant movements of the Saudi Arabian military are being seen in multiple areas, with signs of a large-scale troop withdrawal from eastern Yemen. However, according to a report by The Guardian, this could be preparation for a ground attack. After pulling troops from eastern Yemen, they could use ground forces to attack places like Hodeidah port, where many Houthi rebels are based. Also, a multinational maritime coalition is forming to protect merchant ships from Houthi rebel attacks. The Saudi Arabian Ministry of Defense said Turkey, Pakistan, Egypt, Sudan, and Djibouti issued a joint statement supporting the coalition. And not only the United States, but even Italy has expressed its intention to support this operation. The EU is already conducting Operation Aspidaz, a maritime protection mission in the Red Sea, so it's very likely the EU will also participate in the future. Saudi Arabia is taking the lead and is considering driving out the Houthi rebels. In fact, since 2015, Saudi Arabia has intervened in the Yemeni civil war, supporting the UN-recognized Yemeni government and confronting the Houthi rebels, and there have actually been many clashes. This time, as Saudi Arabia continues to have its oil facilities attacked by the Houthi rebels and even faces a blockade in the Red Sea, it seems they are stepping in more decisively. Tensions between Saudi Arabia and the Houthi rebels have escalated in the past 2 weeks. Previously, the conflict had remained at a limited level, but recently, both sides have started directly targeting each other's key facilities. The Houthi rebels claim to have attacked Aramco facilities, which are key energy sites in Saudi Arabia. Aramco is the most important company supporting the Saudi economy, and if it is attacked, it could affect the country's oil production and export capacity. For Saudi Arabia, since the core foundation of its economy is under attack, it has no choice but to respond strongly. Prior to this, the Saudi military carried out airstrikes on Houthi positions in the port area of Hodeidah in western Yemen. Hodeidah is considered a strategically important area for the Houthi rebels. As a port linked to the Red Sea, this area serves as a key route for moving weapons and supplies. Saudi Arabia's strike on this area is seen as an attempt to directly suppress Houthi military activities. Clashes in the Red Sea persist, with Houthi rebels attacking Saudi ships. This is more than a military conflict. It could impact international maritime routes. Since the Red Sea is a key route for global trade and energy transport, ongoing tensions could impact the international market. Saudi Arabia's main concern isn't just the Houthi rebels, but the growing influence of the pro-Iranian networks centered around them in the Middle East. The Houthi rebels are an armed group within Yemen, but in the international community, they are regarded as a force that maintains close ties with Iran. Iran has supplied the Houthis with military technology and weapons, expanding its influence in the southern Arabian Peninsula and the Red Sea region. There are Iran-linked armed groups in several Middle Eastern countries. Examples include Iraq's pro-Iranian militias, Lebanon's Hezbollah, and Yemen's Houthi rebels. Though active in different regions, they have ties to Iran and are seen as major security threats to the US, its allies, and pro-American countries. Saudi Arabia sees the conflict with the Houthis as more than a border issue, fearing that growing Houthi military strength could increase Iran's influence nearby. In particular, Yemen shares a southern border with Saudi Arabia and is connected to the Red Sea and the strategically important Bab el-Mandeb Strait, making it a region of very high strategic value. If Saudi Arabia launched a major military operation against the Houthis, the conflict could escalate from an internal Yemeni struggle to a contest for influence between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Saudi Arabia's move to weaken the Houthis can be interpreted as an attempt to reduce Iran's regional influence. In particular, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait holds a crucial position in international trade and energy transportation. Whoever controls this region can impact both the Middle East and global maritime security. The US and European countries are closely monitoring the situation. If the Houthis extend their influence in the Red Sea, it could further destabilize international shipping and energy supply chains. Saudi Arabia's maritime defense coalition is seen as stemming from this context. Above all, because of the term Houthi rebels, many people simply think of them as just rebels. Many imagine them as just fighting with AK-47 rifles like the typical image of a rebel group. The Houthi rebels have a military force nearly equal to a regular army. They possess ballistic missiles, and they are a group that also has fighter jets and tanks. On top of that, they are a massive group with as many as 300,000 troops. That's why Saudi Arabia is preparing for a full-scale war with determination. Their track record shows they are often considered to be fighting well. For example, there was a previous battle between the Saudi Arabian army and the Houthi rebels, and at that time there were many cases where some Saudi soldiers abandoned their guns and ran away. That's right, so for Saudi Arabia, the Houthi rebels are definitely not an opponent to be taken lightly. Meanwhile, tensions between the United States and Iran are rising again. President Trump announced he had approved a new plan for military operations against Iran and delivered a hardline message. At a Camp David cabinet meeting, President Trump warned of a strong strike against Iran, saying it couldn't withstand more pressure and would eventually return to negotiations. According to US officials, President Trump is said to have reviewed and approved new attack plans reported by military authorities. However, some analysts in the US believe that there is still a possibility that military operations could be halted and the focus could shift to negotiations if a diplomatic breakthrough is achieved. This contrasts with President Trump's recent statement that talks with Iran were ongoing and military action could be briefly halted. At that time, he emphasized the possibility of a diplomatic solution, but as Iran's actions and clashes between the two sides continued, it is now being assessed that the situation is shifting back toward a hardline response. CBS News reported that the US and Israel are considering a major airstrike on Iran. The report says the operation would target Iran's key energy infrastructure, including oil and gas facilities and power plants. Energy facilities are targeted because they directly affect Iran's economy and military operations. The oil and gas industries are the main sources of revenue for the Iranian government, and power plants are essential infrastructure for the country's operations and the daily lives of its people. The United States and Israel appear to think that pressuring these facilities will both weaken Iran's ability to wage war and raise its economic burden. However, attacks on energy infrastructure can also have major international repercussions. If Iran responds by tightening control over the Strait of Hormuz or attacking nearby US military bases, tensions across the Middle East could rise again. Reports say the US and Israel considered sinking their operations to reduce financial market impact. To limit the broader international impact and the shock to stock markets from major military action, some suggest finishing operations before financial markets open. The timing and scale of the attack are still unknown. A recent summit between US President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu revealed differences on the Iran issue. Prime Minister Netanyahu is reported to have conveyed his opinion that pressure on Iran should be maintained. The summit's key points were split into three main directions. The first was to seek a new agreement with Iran, and the second was to tighten the maritime blockade and step up economic support. A third option was to expand military strikes again if a diplomatic solution proved difficult. Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly expressed doubts about reaching an agreement with Iran. He believes that Iran may try to buy time and weaken international pressure, and he is said to have emphasized the need for stronger economic and military pressure. Israel views Iran's nuclear program, missile capabilities, and growing pro-Iranian forces in the Middle East as major threats. Prime Minister Netanyahu warned that easing pressure on Iran could revive a military threat and seems to have urged the United States to take even stronger action. On the other hand, President Trump is reportedly concerned about the impact that military action could have on international oil prices and the global economy. For the United States faces the burden of maintaining pressure on Iran while also avoiding a situation that could lead to a prolonged conflict. This summit showed that while the United States and Israel share the same goals regarding the Iran issue, there are differences in their approaches. Israel prefers a strong response to weaken Iran's military capabilities, while the United States is keeping its options open between military pressure and diplomatic negotiations. Although it has not been disclosed what specific additional measures Prime Minister Netanyahu proposed, it is becoming clear through this summit that Israel wants to continue pressuring Iran rather than easing tensions.